Let's talk about Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio. It's about 6.1%. It's one of the lowest in sub-Saharan Africa, and of course, a very low ebb, globally speaking, if you look at Nigeria among its peers. So, after years of efforts raising the country's tax to GDP level, remains a very daunting and challenging task for the government. Dele is the fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader at PwC, and he joins me now on the program tonight to discuss this very important issue. Good to have you on the show tonight. Sir, thanks for coming through. When the GDP numbers are released, I'm always worried what you tax professionals and advisors are looking for in the GDP report when those statistics are released.
Yeah, thank you very much, Boston. I think tax matters are usually very it's a difficult and delicate balance because you think about the economy that is still recovering despite the good news around the GDP numbers. But then you start asking yourself, is it the right time to start imposing new taxes or increasing the rate of existing taxes? And in many cases, the answer would be no, because if you think about the overall impact on the economy, it may actually be counterproductive to do that. So when we see these GDP numbers, some of the things we're trying to look at, particularly for Nigeria, is whether the tax revenue is growing faster than the GDP. Because if your tax to GDP ratio is very low, it simply means that you need to grow faster than the GDP in terms of tax revenue for you to catch up. So we are currently at about 6%, whereas the average for Africa is around 17%, and even more so for other regions of the world. The OECD is well over 34%. So you also want to look at whether the growth is inclusive in the sense that which sectors are contributing towards the growth, and are they also contributing towards the tax revenue of government. You also want to look at, what are the growth drivers? Do we have sectors that are growing because of one-off issues like the pandemic pushing everybody online? Do we have sectors that are growing because of growth drivers like tax incentives provided by government? And is the cost of those incentives commensurate to the benefits you are getting from the growth from such sectors? And overall, you also want to see whether it's sustainable and whether government is taxing enablers or whether they are taxing profit. Because one thing you also find is sometimes from a policy point of view, if you have sectors that are enabling the economy, you don't start taxing them because the incidents might just fall on the wrong people. So it's a question of whether you are taxing seed or fruit. Obviously, if you are taxing seed, it's not sustainable, but if you are taxing fruit, then maybe that is okay.
Very well said, Taiwo Udele, but what could be the estimated tax potential of the size of Nigeria's GDP, by the way?
Yeah, that's a good question, Boston. I think if you look at it today in terms of tax collections, FRS in 2021 collected about 6.4 trillion. We do not have the numbers yet for all the states, but they tend to collect around 1.3 to 1.5 trillion in IGR or revenue combined, from taxes. And the Nigerian customs, a little bit close to 2 trillion naira. If you put all of that together, you find that our tax revenue as a country is somewhere around, 10 trillion naira. But if you look at the size of the economy, in GDP terms, this is an economy of 160 trillion naira. So even if you just estimate based on the average GDP tax to GDP ratio for Africa at about 16, 17%, that would easily give you about, maybe 25 trillion naira. So the tax gap is easily about 15 trillion, if not more than that. South Africa, which is the second largest economy in Africa, which also has been dealing with all the issues we have been dealing with as a result of COVID-19, last year collected, over 35 trillion naira equivalent in taxes. So it's a smaller economy, If they can collect 35 trillion, I see no reason why Nigeria should not even be collecting a lot more than that. So I do think that the tax gap in Nigeria is quite wide, and we need to start doing something about it sooner rather than later.
Where is the money, Taiwo? Where is this? About 10 trillion in Nigeria, about 35 trillion naira in South Africa. There's a gap of about 25 trillion. Where is this money in this economy? Where is it in that GDP?
Yeah, no, I think, if you have, GDP and it's diversified, but maybe not very productive, it can have an implication for your tax revenue. For example, our agricultural sector is such a huge component of our GDP. And in fact, I think the agri sector, not only is it that they do not pay taxes, because a lot of the players are subsistence farmers. A lot of their products are exempt from VAT, for example. On top of that, they also get a lot of incentives. You may actually find that the agri sector, for example, is a negative contributor to tax revenue, which in some sense is not bad, but you have to move strategically over time by looking at agri as actually a viable business where people can make a lot of money, billions of naira, and pay taxes instead of just looking at it as being subsistence alone. Same thing if you look at services, which is actually the bigger part of our GDP, whether you are talking about telecommunication, professional services, of course, financial services, ICT. So these are areas where Nigeria can harness. First and foremost, our philosophy has to be that we want to enable and stimulate growth. When there's growth, then you can harvest by way of taxes. And again, like I said, not taxing the seed, but taxing the fruits.
Give me an idea, Taiwo, what's the greatest hindrance to effective tax regime in Nigeria? We've talked about the fact that the GDP is not a productive one, really, in the real sense of the word. What else do we have in our tax regime that's a hindrance?
Yeah, we have a lot of issues, but if I want to just maybe speak to the most important ones, I'll say we have a structural problem with the tax system. First and foremost, in terms of the design of the tax system and the burden of taxation. The burden of taxation today rests disproportionately on the poorer people and the lower cadre of society, including small businesses, because many of those laws were not reviewed for so many years. So you find in many countries, poor people are exempted with high threshold, and then you focus on the middle class and the upper class, as well as businesses that have the ability to pay. So structurally, we're focusing on the wrong people in the tax net. Remember a couple of years ago when we launched VADE, the Voluntary Asset and Income Declaration Scheme, the vice president acting as the president at the time actually said that 96% of income taxes collected in Nigeria was from PAYE. So PAYE people are not they're not the richest people around. So structurally, you have the design of the system is faulty. In addition to that, we have multiplicity of taxes and multiplicity of taxing agencies or revenue agencies. Based on the result of the FRS that was released for last year, about 97%, 98% of the revenue came from just about 4 taxes. At the state level, about 90% of their taxes, comes from about 2 different taxes. And yet we have over 55 official taxes, over 200 unofficial taxes. So which means Nigerians, even though they might be paying not so much in formal taxes, but they're paying a lot in informal taxes to non-state actors, and even more so in implicit taxes of having to take care of what government should normally be doing for them. Put all of this together, you will see that those are the reasons why our tax revenue is pretty small. In addition to the fact that Nigerians don't seem to always get value for the little that they pay, and that goes to the heart of the social contract as a matter of reality.
Well, I guess we're going to leave it there for tonight. Thank you so much, Taiwo Udele. We'll continue to check in with professionals like yourself, a fiscal policy partner, an Africa tax leader at PwC Nigeria. See you next time. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.